Good morning, class. I am Jobili Ontoy, and for today, I'm going to discuss the sentence structure and the types of sentences. So now let's begin. Before I'm going to discuss the sentence structure and the types of sentences, I will introduce first the basic sentence elements for you to know what are the parts of a sentence and what consists of a sentence. So, a sentence is a set of words that contain a subject and a predicate. So, it has a subject and a predicate. The basic sentence elements. So, there are two types of clause. The first one is the independent clause. An independent clause can stand alone as a sentence. It contains a subject and a verb, and it expresses a complete thought. We have here an example of an independent clause. So, I want to eat bacon. It has a subject and it also have a predicate. So, I want to eat bacon expresses a complete thought. Another example is he reads many books. The subject there is he, and it has also the predicate. So let's move on to dependent clause. A dependent clause is not a complete sentence. It must be attached to an independent clause to become complete. This is also known as a subordinate clause. So we have here an example. So try to look at the example for you to know what is a dependent clause. So although I like spaghetti, as we read this, it leaves us hanging because it doesn't express a complete thought. So with the second example, because he reads many books, it doesn't express a complete thought also. So the next element is the subject, a person, animal, place, thing, or concept that does an action. We can determine the subject in a sentence by asking the question who or what. So in this example, the first example is I am hungry. So the subject there is I, and it answers the question to whom or what. To who or what. The another example is he is smart. The subject there is he. So let's proceed to verb. Verb expresses what the person, animal, place, thing, or concept does. We can determine the verb in a sentence by asking the question, what was the action or what happened? So we have here an example of a verb in a sentence. So the first one is I dance attentively. So in this example, dance is the verb and it answers the question what the action or what happened. So the next example is she watched movies. The verb there is watch. So let's proceed to object. A person, animal, place, thing, or concept that receives the action. We can determine the object in a sentence by asking the question, the object did what or to whom or for whom. We have here an example of an object in a sentence. That bag is so expensive. So the bag is the object and it answers the question to whom or what is expensive. So the next example is I want to read many books. So the object in this sentence is books. Is it clear? Did you get my point? Okay, let's proceed. So now let's move on to the prepositional phrase. A phrase that begins with a preposition. Example: in, at, for, behind, until, after, of, during. It modifies a word in the sentence. A prepositional phrase answer one of many questions. So, a prepositional phrase answers the questions where, when, and in what way. So, let's try to look for the prepositional phrase in these given examples. So, I like to eat chocolate during snacks. So, the prepositional phrase in this sentence is during snacks, and it answers the question when. The other example is the vegetables grow in the garden. So the prepositional phrase in this sentence is in the garden, and it answers the question where. Types of conjunctions. Conjunctions is the glue that holds words, phrases, and clauses, both dependent and independent. So we have coordinating conjunction and subordinating conjunction. Coordinating conjunction. They join together words, phrases, and independent clauses. With them, short and choppy sentences can be joined into fuller lines. There are 7 coordinating conjunction, and they are just easy to remember if you can just think the acronym FANBOYS. So there are 7 coordinating conjunction, and for you to remember this 7 coordinating conjunction, all you need to remember is the acronym FANBOYS. So F stands for, A stands for and, N stands for nor, B stands for but, O stands for of, Y stands for yet, and S stands for so. So let's proceed to the subordinating conjunction. It always introduces a dependent clause, tying it to an independent clause. So the subordinating clause is written first before the dependent clause. So we have here some examples of subordinating conjunction. So although, as, because, before, how, if, once, since, then, that, though, those, until, when, whenever, where, whatever, while, and why are the examples of subordinating conjunction. That's it. We're done discussing the basic sentence elements. So now you are now ready to my next lesson, which is my main lesson, the structure of English. It is now easy for you to follow because you already know the elements of a sentence and what consists of a sentence. So you can now identify here in our next lesson. So, a simple sentence. A simple sentence contains a subject and a verb, and it may also have an object and modifier. However, it contains only one independent clause. So, a simple sentence contains only one independent clause. That's what we need to remember. So, an example of a simple sentence. So, number 1, try to look at the example. So, number 1, she wrote. That sentence expresses a complete thought because it has a subject and it also have a verb. So, the verb there describes the subject. So, it expresses a complete thought. Another example is she completed her task today. In this example, we have the subject she, the verb completed, and the prepositional phrase her task today. So this is an example of a simple sentence because it expresses a complete thought. Another example is Joe waited for the train. Joe is the subject, waited is the verb, and the prepositional phrase is for the train. So it expresses a complete thought. Another example is they studied APA rules for many hours. So in this example, they is the subject, studied is the verb, APA rules is the object, and the prepositional phrase is for many hours. Did you understand? Okay, let's proceed. So let's move on to a compound sentence. A compound sentence contains at least two independent clauses. These two independent clauses can be combined with a comma and a coordinating conjunction or with a semicolon. So let us look at the example. She completed her task today and she rested for a while. So in this sentence, we can identify the independent clause. The two independent clauses are she completed her task today. It can stand alone, and the other one is she rested for a while. It can also stand alone, and these two are joined by the coordinating conjunction and. So this is an example of a compound sentence. Another example for a compound sentence. I look for Mary and Samantha at the bus station, but they arrived at the station before noon and left on the bus before I arrived. So in this sentence, we have two independent clauses, and these are I look for Mary and Samantha at bus station. It can stand alone. It has a coordinating conjunction to join the other independent clause. They arrived at the station before noon and left on the bus before I arrived. So all in all, it is a compound sentence because it has two independent clauses that joins with a coordinating conjunction. Another example, our car broke down. We came last. It is separated with a semicolon. So the two independent clauses are our car broke down. It can stand alone. We came last night can stand alone also. So it is compound sentence. Let's move on to a complex sentence. A complex sentence contains at least one independent clause and at least one dependent clause. So we have here an example of a complex sentence. All we need to remember that a complex sentence has at least one independent clause and at least one dependent clause. We also need to remember that if a sentence begins with a dependent clause, note the comma after the clause. So meaning, if we will start the sentence with a dependent clause, we should put a comma first before writing the independent clause. So on the other hand, if we begin the sentence with an independent clause, there will be no comma separating the clauses. So the comma is no longer needed if the independent clause is written first. So that's it. Did you get my point? Did you understand, class? Okay, we will proceed. So an example of a complex sentence. Our dog barks when she hears a noise. So in this example, we can identify one independent clause and one dependent clause. And it is joined with the subordinating conjunction when the independent clause in this sentence is our dog barks. So it can stand alone. While the dependent clause is she hears a noise. So it is independent because it doesn't express a complete thought. Another example is because he organized his sources by theme, it was easier for his readers to follow. So in this example, the sentence begins with a dependent clause. So again, in beginning with a dependent clause, we should put a comma after it before we will write the independent clause. So that's it. Is it clear? Another example for the complex sentence. They studied APA rules for many hours as they were so interesting. So in this sentence, it starts with a independent clause. So they studied APA rules for many hours, so it can stand alone. And there is a coordinating conjunction, which is as, that helps to connect the the dependent clause. They were so interesting. So is it clear? So this sentence is a complex sentence because it has one independent clause and one dependent clause. So now let's move on to a compound complex. Sentence types can also be combined. A compound complex sentence contains at least two independent clauses and at least one dependent clause. So for us to remember what is a complex sentence, we will just remember that it consists of at least two or more independent clause and at least one dependent clause. So we have here an example. With pizza and soda at hand, they studied APA rules for many hours, and they decided that writing in APA made sense because it was clear, concise, and objective. So in this example, we have two dependent clauses and two independent clauses. So the dependent clauses are with pizza and soda at hand. So this clause cannot stand alone. The other dependent clause in the sentence is because it was clear, concise, and objective. So because it was clear, concise, and objective, it doesn't express a complete thought. So it is a dependent clause. We have here two independent clauses, and these two independent clauses are joined with coordinating conjunction, which is and. So the first independent clause here is they studied APA rules for many hours. The other independent clause in this example is they decided that writing in APA made sense. So that's it. Is it clear? So we have another example. John didn't come because he was ill, so Mary was not happy. So we have two independent clause in this sentence and one dependent clause. John didn't came is a independent clause, and Mary was not happy is an independent clause also. We have the subordinating conjunction because, which join the dependent clause he was ill. We also have the coordinating conjunction so that joins the independent clause Mary was not happy. So that's it. this sentence is a compound complex sentence. Another example, she completed her literature review, but she still needs to work on her methods section even though she finished her methods course last semester. So in this example, we have two independent clause joined by the coordinating conjunction, and we also have one dependent clause. She completed her literature review is an independent clause and it expresses a complete thought. But is the coordinating conjunction that joins the other independent clause, which is she still needs to work on her methods section. The dependent clause here is even though he finished her methods course last semester. So even though she finished her methods course last semester, again, it doesn't express a complete thought. That's why it is attached to an independent clause. So that's end my discussion. So I'm done discussing the four types of sentence structure. So as a recap, a simple sentence consists of one independent clause, while a compound sentence consists of two independent clauses joined by the coordinating conjunctions. So again, if we will going to remember the coordinating conjunctions, we will just think the acronym FANBOYS. F stands for, A stands for and, N stands for nor, B stands for but, O stands for of, Y stands for yet, and S stands for so. So that's it. Those are the coordinating conjunctions, are also known as the FANBOYS. And the complex sentence, it has one independent clause and one dependent clause. And the compound complex sentence consists of two or more independent clause and at least one dependent clause. So again, compound complex consists of two or more independent clause and at least one dependent clause. So that's it. So for now, I have an activity for you to answer and for me to know if you learn something or you gain knowledge from my discussion. So now I will let you to construct two sentences in each type of sentence structure that we had just discussed. So meaning two for simple sentence, two for compound sentence, two for complex sentence, and two for compound complex sentence. So all in all, you need to construct 8 sentences in all. Another activity that I prepared for you is this. Identify the given sentences according to its structure. So this activity is very easy if you just follow my discussion or you just listen to my discussion. So I have 5 sentences in all. All you need to do is to identify whether it is a simple sentence, compound sentence, compound complex sentence. You only need to understand it. So that's it. That's end my discussion. Hope you learned something from it, and I hope that you enjoy while I am discussing. Thank you for listening and see you in my next class. Bye bye.